Muted.
Could you also, Larry, make me a co-host so I can share my screen?
Yes.
Muted.
All right, we are live.
Okay, before we start, can you also mute everyone so we do not have any background? Okay, we're all set. Larry, you ready? And Cheryl, you ready?
Yes.
Okay, I'd like to call to order the meeting of the Finance and Claims Committee meeting for today, Thursday, May 14th at 7:03 p.m. I will share my screen so I can bring up the agenda. Hopefully everyone can see the agenda. Okay, great. Our first item is calling the roll. Councilman Nick Saccinelli.
Present.
Councilman Tom Keegan. Tom Keegan. Maybe he's muted. Councilman David Hooverman.
Here.
Councilman George Theodoridis. George.
Here.
Okay, and Councilman Ernie Dumas.
Here.
And myself, Councilmember Greg Burnett. So we have a quorum. Moving on to item 3, public participation. Comments submitted prior to the meeting. And Larry, I believe there's no one from the public that has called in that's waiting to speak. Is that correct?
Yes, I don't see, there are no attendees from the public at this point.
Okay, so we will close public participation and move on to approval of the minutes of the Finance Committee meeting dated April 9th, 2020. Can I have a motion from one of the committee members?
So moved. David Huvelman.
Thank you, Councilmember Huvelman. Do we have any corrections? I know I have just a few typographical corrections, all on page 1 under attendance. In terms of names, Nick Saccinelli's name is spelled incorrectly. There's no H in his name. David Hooverman, it's Heuvelman. Barbara Smith, her Smith is spelled Smyth. And finally, Diane Johnson is actually Dominique Johnson. Those were the only corrections to the minutes that I had. Did anyone else have any corrections noting for the minutes? Okay, seeing none. I'll call for a roll call vote of the approval of the minutes as amended. Councilman Saccinelli.
Aye.
Councilman Keegan. Councilman Hooverman.
Aye.
Councilmember Theodoridis.
Yes.
Councilman Dumas. Councilman Dumas.
Yes.
And I'll go back, Councilmember Keegan.
Yeah,
Tom, are you,
He's no
okay,
longer-
thank you.
he's no longer, I don't see him.
Okay, maybe his line dropped. So the minutes are approved as amended. So with that, we'll move on to item 5, which is the Claims Committee report, and we'll cover item 5, 6, and 7 together. Our tax collector will graciously make those presentations.
Good evening.
Good evening.
Can you hear me?
Yes, we can.
Outstanding. Okay. For your review tonight and also for your approval, because there are several special requests that are special requests solely by virtue of their high dollar amount. There are several that are in excess of $10,000. They were basically duplicate payments or overpayments or payments that were made on the wrong account in error. So we would need you to take a vote on that. And if you had any other questions on any of these, I'll try to answer them for you. And then I would move on to the next 2 items.
Great. So do we have a motion to approve the claims report, received monthly claims report dated May 14th, 2020?
I'll move that. Nick Sachin.
Councilmember Sacchinelli moves the claims report. Are you ready for the question? I'll call for a roll call vote. Councilman Sacchinelli,
Aye.
Councilman Keegan,
Yes.
Councilman Hooverman,
Aye.
Councilman Theoridis,
Yes.
and Councilman Dumas.
Yes.
All right, very good, thank you.
Thank
It's
you.
unanimous, so the claims report is approved. Moving on to item 6, which is the tax collector narrative.
Very good. As you might imagine, things are a little bit different, working under COVID restrictions, but we are still processing payments. We are processing mail. We're doing all of our normal functions, reporting to the motor vehicle department, releasing liens, working with other departments. The problem is that our volume is down because some customers because the building is closed. So what we did since our last report, we did open a payment window in the first floor lounge. If you are interested, there's a photo of it on our homepage, on our website, in the little patio area right there near the parking lot. So people can park their car and walk. We can still process their payment. We have a credit card machine there, debit card machine. The only thing we're not doing is we're not taking cash because there's no security there. It's not a secure area. There's no cameras, and we don't feel comfortable taking cash there. But we are now this week starting also to work with some people from Parks and Rec who are there doing resident passes, parking passes, and disposal station passes. So we have a little bit of company in that room, but looking forward, if the building is still going to be closed for the foreseeable future, we felt it was important to put ourselves there and make ourselves available to the public. I've been very, very fortunate with my staff that they have all been able to still come into work. And we have been functioning more or less the same, doing the same functions that we normally do, except that our volume is down. If you look at the numbers in terms of the collection rate and where we needed to be year to date, thankfully, we had a very good early spring. So our numbers are not really down the way they would be in maybe another town. So we're at 98.12% of our levy as of the end of April, which is really right where we need to be. Part of the reason for this was because we did everything early. We filed our liens even before COVID hit. We filed our liens on the 12th of March. And we had started working on that tax sale back in November. So we had to put the tax sale on hold due to COVID and due to the governor's executive order. But we have collected on 47 properties, paid in full from that tax sale in excess of $2 million. So that collection has helped us keep pace with what our budgeted collection goals were, even with COVID, even dealing with COVID and being closed to the public as long as we were. So in terms of how we're doing, I think we're doing all right. I'm very concerned about how we are going to bill going forward. My goal is to send our tax bills on time and follow the same schedule that we normally do, where we get them in the mail by the middle of June and give our taxpayers, in this case, this year, most of them, as you know, are getting until October 1st to pay. But we've been getting a lot of calls from people who say, can I still pay on time? Can I still pay in July? And we said, yes, absolutely. We would love it if you would pay in July. So I'd really like to get those bills out on time and try to have some level of normalcy with the collection cycle. But we're trying the best we can. We've been very, very grateful for the support that we got from our IT department to enable us to set up that remote office and so forth. But we're managing. I'm heartened by the fact that the numbers aren't any worse than they are. But the spreadsheet and the narrative both basically say the same thing, which is that we are on track in terms of our current year, and we're looking ahead to where we're going for the next year. By next month, when I come before you next month, if it's the middle of June, I'm going to be very hopeful that our bills will either be at the printer, on the verge of being mailed, or even possibly be out in the mail by the middle of June. And that's where we stand. And I'll be glad to field your questions.
I'd just like to applaud your leadership and your department for your innovation in creating that walk-up window. I mean, you took a regular window and made it a great resource for the city, for those who may not have the wherewithal to pay online and they prefer to pay their taxes or whatever other items directly. They have the ability to do that while maintaining physical distancing and being safe. So we're not skipping a beat, and that's innovation.
Thank you.
That's great.
Thank you. We had a lot of help.
Well, we all need some help. Any other members of the committee have questions? I see
Mr.
Councilman.
David Huvelman. I just wanted to say thank you, Lisa, for all the work that you guys have been doing. Really fantastic. I just have one simple question. You mentioned in your narrative that you're showing a slight downtick, 0.37% downtick. Do you think that's relative to COVID right now, or is it just a virtue of the building being closed and that we're probably going to be on the same pace come next month, ending the fiscal year?
That's a good question. I think we're fine. I think it might be any number of things. If we got one really big account to come in, that figure would change. The real difference is in our volume, and the CFO has asked me to track, starting the first week of March of last year through this year, and we're comparing week by week both the dollars, the percentage we're collecting to budget, and we're also looking at the volume. Now the volume is down about 40%, but the dollars are holding. Thankfully, that's because of the tax sale. If this could have happened, if you could say, want to pick a good time for this to happen, this was a good time for it to happen in a tax sale year where we had already started working on the sale, and we got in what might actually be an extra $2 million between November and now. So we're all right. I think you're going to definitely see a little bit of slippage there, but there are still people coming in to pay. And now that it is going to be beach season and people want to get their parking pass for the beach, individuals who owe past due motor vehicle taxes are going to have to bring those taxes current in order to get their beach pass. That's something that is not COVID related. We do that all the time. It's also building time. If you want to get a building permit, your taxes need to be paid. So if we get a couple of accounts, big ones that come in and have to pay because they're getting a building permit, that's going to help boost those numbers up a little bit. So we're doing all the things that we normally would do. I'm also still sending out a letter to those who are still in the sale. And it's a very carefully crafted letter that starts out by saying, we hope you're well and so forth. The sale is on hold, but we feel obliged to inform you that at some point we will pick up where we left off, and these amounts are still past due, and here's what you currently owe. So at some point when the state of emergency is over, we are going to pick up where we left off, and depending on the calendar, start working on that sale either again for this fall or for next year. But we're doing basically everything we can do to try to get the money in, but also try to be sensitive to the fact that people have other things to worry about right now besides their taxes.
Great. Thank you very much. And again,
welcome.
thank you for the work that you're doing.
Could I add
You're
a
welcome.
comment, please?
My pleasure.
Yes.
Henry Dackwood, CFO. I want to thank Chairman Burnett for recognizing Lisa's contribution. It was her idea to have some sort of walk-up window. We talked to Jessica Casey from Economic Development about a good location. We then talked to IT on their constraints and restrictions. Building management came through, and it was a team effort that ended up with this particular window, which is used not just by us, but also by Parks and Rec, and also by the clerk. Okay, so it's multifactional. It's a combination of different departments working together to solve a unique problem. And I think that's just a great sense of teammanship that we have in the administration. I thank Lisa for the idea and pushing it forward to completion. The second thing I'd like to do is talk a little bit about the taxes themselves. I think in Lisa's report, we're in the low 98s, okay, 98.2 or 3, but our budget was 98.6%. So we've collected 99% of this year's annual budget. Part of the reason is because of the $2 million that resulted from the tax sale. That happens every 2 years. What tends to happen in Norwalk is when you're notified that your home may be seized for a tax sale, you come in and you pay off your taxes. So we were the beneficiaries of that. We are looking at the statistics from March to where we are now, which is about 1.5 or 2 weeks into May. Looking at that period of time last year versus this period this year, our number of transactions is down 40%, but our tax dollar collections are down about 10%. So from that point of view, I don't know whether that means the people who owe more are paying, but we're relatively okay in my mind. We're only down 10% from where we were last year. So I think for this year, we're kind of okay. And my gut is telling me that it's the question of access. It's not economic impact of COVID that I don't have the money. I don't believe. I believe it's, we can't get there. We can't do it online. We can't do it by mail. We're coming here, but we may be starting to see the economic impact. I think we'll see the real impact. We'll drop the tax bills in the mail in June. We will see the front end, which are the institutions and banks who are required to pay us within the 30 days as they always do. And we estimate that that's 50% of the payers of the tax bills. And then in October, when the end of the grace period occurs, we will then see that. So we're monitoring it carefully, and we're in Lisa's very good hands. She makes it very easy for anyone to pay taxes. We accommodate them. Not only can they pay it on time, I would be happy to take it early, Lisa. You can advertise that. So
We do.
you know, so
We
anyway,
do.
in sum, I think the department's working well, and to get the tax bills out on time, there's been an intense coordination between the Finance Committee, the BET, the council on where we are with approval of budgets, coordination with the tax assessor, and also obviously with IT, our outside printer. So we are pre-planning in a way to try to anticipate any hurdles and to overcome them to get those bills in the mail on time. So Lisa and the other departments doing a great job, and we'll keep you informed. Thank you.
Great. Thank you, Henry. One final question, Lisa. What decision points will you consider in terms of whether we have a tax sale in 2020 or hold off till 2021?
I want to see how, first of all, we can't do anything more on the sale until the state of emergency is lifted. So whenever that's lifted, then we get the go ahead that we can start the process again. If we started right away with a demand letter and things like that, it would take, depending on what part of the month it was, 4 to 5 months to get the sale underway. I don't know that having a sale in the middle of the winter is a good idea. And if it were that late, I would probably just wait and have the sale next summer. But if we needed to get the money in right away, if we had a very dismal summer collection period with the current taxes, then we would step it up and we would have it whenever we needed to have it, in the fall or in the winter. And also we want to sort of feel out the administration, how they feel about it. If they felt that it wasn't a good idea to do it in the fall, we would definitely be interested in their theories and the council and so forth. It's kind of too early to tell. My main concern was just to reach out to those who were involved, just to let them know that the taxes that were part of the sale had nothing to do with COVID. They were past due and delinquent already before any of us even knew what COVID was. And they're not going to be affected by COVID in any way. They're not going to be reduced. They're not going to be forgiven. There needs to be no doubt about that. Those taxes are still due. We're hearing a little bit from people about, I think taxes should be cut in half because of COVID. I think that there should be a suspension of all tax collection activity because of COVID. And we have to sort of gently explain that it really doesn't work that way, because the city has obligations and you're expecting services to be provided that are funded 90% by property taxes. So I don't know enough about when this is going to end to be able to tell. If he doesn't end the state of emergency until July or August, and we have a good collection and the money is coming in, then it probably won't be until next summer. Or maybe we'll find a happy medium. Maybe it'll be in February or March. I don't know. But the earliest I could have it, if he were to end it in June, I would need about 4 months, 4 to 5 months to get the sale, to follow all the statutory notice requirements that we have to comply with in order to post those notices and do mailings and notify the lien holders and so forth.
Let's just clarify, the he that you're referring to is the governor, and this is the governor's emergency orders that we.
Yes, thank you. Yes, that's absolutely correct, Governor Lamont.
Great. Thank you. Thank you for those headlights in terms of what we need to consider going forward.
Yes, you're welcome.
All right. So
I don't think you need to vote on those. I think those are for information. So I'll probably exit the meeting after this with your permission.
yes, thank you. Yes, those both items 6 and 7 for information. And I just want to mention that on item 5 that we approved unanimously for the Claims Committee, that will appear on the Common Council agenda on May 26 for council approval.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, great. Moving on
Everybody stay well.
Thank
Great.
you.
Thank you.
Thank you, bye.
Moving on to item 8, authorize the mayor, Harry W. Rilling, to submit an application to the State of Connecticut Department of Emergency Services and Public Protection Division of Emergency Management and Homeland Security Grant for the Emergency Management Performance Grant, which is approximately $65,000. Do we have a motion?
Yeah, I'll move that.
Councilmember Sacchinelli moves the motion. We're ready for discussion. And I believe we have the Fire Deputy Chief Albert Bassett to present this item.
Yes, sir. Thank you. Yeah, this is a reimbursement grant for our regional hazmat team. The city of Norwalk, this will be the fourth, if approved, this will be the fourth year. Norwalk has acted as the fiduciary. The hazmat team is a non-entity. It's not a municipality. So we just need a municipality to sponsor the grant. We purchase through our purchasing rules, and then the state of Connecticut reimburses the 65,000 to the city. So, and this, like I said, a fourth year that we'll be doing that. So I need asking for the approval for the fiduciary and to move the grant through council to get it signed.
Thank you. Do we have any questions? Okay, hearing none, I will call a roll call vote. Councilmember Stachinelli,
Aye.
Councilmember Keegan, Councilmember Keegan. Okay, Councilmember Hooverman,
Aye.
Councilmember Theoridis,
Yes.
Councilmember Dumas. Councilmember Dumas.
Yes.
Thank you. It is unanimous and approved. So this will go forward to the full council on the May 26th council meeting for full council approval.
Thank you.
Okay, moving on to item number 9. Authorize the mayor, Harry W. Rilling, to submit an application to the state of Connecticut for grant funds provided under the state of Connecticut's Local Capital Improvement Fund for Local Capital Improvement Program, $647,076, 2020 entitlement. Do we have a motion on item number 9?
So moved.
Councilmember Hooverman moves the motion. And I believe we have Anthony Carr, who is the Operations and Public Works Director, presenting this item.
Good evening, Mr. Chairman. How are you and members of the committee?
Thank you. Pretty good.
So every year, the state of Connecticut Office of Policy and Management issues an entitlement formula-based allocation of money to each municipality, which generally varies by population, geography, number of lane miles of road, et cetera, et cetera. So the bigger the municipality, the more money you typically get. This year, we were allocated $648,000 approximately based on our municipality size. And actually, it's a formula-based entitlement, and there's a lot of variables to it, but just to keep it at higher level. These costs that we're submitting an application for are eligible costs associated with our road paving program, which is considered one of several different eligible costs under the LoCIP program, other than bridges and public building construction. So in fiscal year 2019, so from June 1st to the end of the construction season, give or take November, December, we paved approximately 39 segments of road. That is included in the attachment as backup. And I believe the value of that work was approximately $3 million. So of the $3 million, we're seeking the full reimbursement request that's allocated to us from Connecticut, which is an amount of $648,000. So this request tonight is for the application to be authorized, recommended approval from your committee to council for the mayor to sign the application, which will be submitted to the state of Connecticut Office of Policy and Management for the full reimbursement amount. All the costs are eligible. Again, it's simple, it's straight up road paving. So there's no snags or extra things that we need to submit. It's a pretty straightforward cost. We've done this last few years. We typically submit the same backup information to the state that you see before you. So we don't anticipate any issues on receiving the funding other than the state scaling back due to the COVID-19 pandemic. But barring anything from that, we expect to receive the full amount.
Great, thank you. Is the amount that we're showing here fairly consistent with what we've requested in the past few years in terms of reimbursement?
Yes, over the last several years, I was looking at the chart, and our reimbursement ranges, I believe, is 638 at one point. We hover around 638, 628, 623. So from 2007, we were at 628. It didn't go up every year, it fluctuated a little bit, but now we're at 647. So we're hovering in that 630 to 650 mark.
Great. Do we have any questions from the member of the committee?
This is David Huvelman. Anthony, just a clarification. This is for work that's already been completed. Is that correct?
Correct. The backup before you shows that the completed road paving list for 2019, which again was the work done from July 1st in the construction season, which typically in November, depending on the weather. We've also included the proposed road paving list for 2020, which is not part of the eligibility for the reimbursement. That was just more for reference. But the expenses that we actually, you're only going to get reimbursed for the work that's performed. So we did perform about $3 million from July 1st to November. And of that, we're seeking 648, which is the full allotment from the state of Connecticut.
Okay. Thank you. Appreciate that.
You're welcome.
Any other questions from members of the committee? Okay, hearing and seeing none, I'll call for a roll call vote. Council Member Sacchinelli.
Aye.
Council Member Keegan.
Yes.
Council Member Hooverman.
Aye.
Council Member Theodoredis.
Yes.
And Council Member Dumas. Thank you. So yes, thank you. So item 9 is approved unanimously, and we will move forward. That item will move forward to the May 26th Common Council meeting for full council approval. Thank you. Moving on to the next item on the agenda. Which is the next item is the update from Oak Hills Authority. I believe Mr. Carl Dickens and company will be leading that discussion. Let me pull up the presentation that they would like to go through. Can everyone see the presentation? Carl, can you see, are you okay with this? I think you're muted.
Greg, I'm not able to see anything on my screen.
Yeah, what I was saying is I think, Greg, what you have to do is you have to close this one that you're sharing, stop sharing,
Okay.
and reshare with the PowerPoint. It won't let you do 2 at a time.
Can you see it now?
I can.
Okay. You're all set.
I never thought that I would start to become a Zoom IT person, but it has started to happen. So first of all, Mr. Chairman, thank you very much for inviting us to this evening, and other distinguished members of the commission, as well as honoring our request to move up to the position that we did on your agenda. It's very much appreciated. I also wanted to say a couple of things before we get started, that I want to thank the mayor, many of you on council that are here that have taken our phone calls and our emails in our time of need when we were looking around a week ago trying to figure out what we're going to do. And also we had a very good conversation with the CFO, with Henry and his staff last week, which was also very informative. So we do appreciate all of that, and we appreciate what you've done in the past for us and everything. What we want to share with you this evening is just some numbers to show you where we're at, having just opened last Saturday morning at 9 o'clock. Literally the end of last week when we were talking to many of you, we had under $3,000 of revenue in the bank for anything. COVID had really taken us down on revenue, and expenses were still there, and so we were really in a bad way. So what you see in front of you right now, and we have with us Randy Avery, who is the attorney for the authority, and also we have Mark Gardner, who is our financial person. So what you see here is, as of the close of business yesterday, we have now $117,390 in the bank. Now, while that looks great, and it is, we'll show you, Mark will take you through a couple of slides in a moment that will diminish that number greatly, but it'll allow us to keep growing and keep it open. This weekend is going to be a beautiful weekend. I wish I could invite all of you to come out and play golf if you haven't already had a tee time, but you can't because we're sold out. We're sold out both tomorrow, and we're sold out Saturday, Sunday. Even the chair tried to squeeze in a tee time, and it's not working. So we did have a very gratuitous donation, you see at the top there, of $20,000 from one of our patrons who has also helped us with other things at the park, which also, before I forget, I want to thank Anthony Carr and his crew for starting work on the drainage issue down around 5 and behind the 6 tee box. It looks fabulous, and if the weather holds and not real bad tonight, I guess rain, paving will take place starting tomorrow. And that problem, which has caused us problems over the years, particularly with insurance premiums going up, putting us in a risk, will finally come to an end. So Anthony, if you're still on, thank you very much for that. It's very much appreciated. Also, the tennis, which is, we've licensed over the years to Kings Highway, has not been able to play indoors. So there's very stringent COVID rules for tennis as well, that they are looking to start playing outdoors. And we have all of those rules in place for our tennis courts, the city's tennis courts or the park's tennis courts. And, it's only singles, no doubles, and all the COVID protection is being taken place. With that, being able to do that, we were able to get 1/3 of the payments that we need off the license for tennis every year paid in advance, and that is where that other $8,333 came from. The restaurant is not open, so that $1,900 there is money that was paid us prior to shutting down, because the restaurant was open for the first part of March. They had a couple of events, and so we asked for partial payment for the month of March, and that's what that $1,900 represents. The restaurant will be looked at to possibly open up under COVID standards and the governor's standards after the 20th, in accordance with some of the other golf courses that are around. Our halfway house is all COVID ready to go, and we will be opening that up this weekend, which will allow the operator to generate some money. Also will generate some refreshments and food for our patrons who have been coming out and playing. If there's any type of issue or problem at all, I have promised the mayor and Alicia that we'll shut those down instantly, but I don't anticipate any. So far this week, everything has run really smoothly like clockwork. The season passes that we have initiated, we did not change the rate card for Oak Hills. The rate card that we had a public hearing on back in February and that was agreed to and passed is still in place. But we did take advantage of the fact that we're allowed to have special rate cards and special offerings. We didn't want to label this the COVID special because it's such a negative thing, the COVID itself. But we did put together a package for season passes that will run till the end of April next year. So it's kind of goes through our downtime anyway. We're limiting those to 75 for residents and 25 for non-residents. They were a hit, to say the least, because we sold $62,000 worth of them. And it allows you to come and play unlimited golf, get your 14-day tee times. This is something that's been asked of the park and of the authority for some time now. And so we experimented with it, and it seems to work very well. Green fees, which is rounds being played and people coming up and playing, just since Saturday has been $13,004. Those are all walkers, because when we opened up, again, in accordance with COVID and with the mayor, We were not going to do any riding whatsoever, even one to a cart. We wanted to be very careful and very cautious. And we didn't even put out pull carts. So you either walked or you carried your bag, or you had your own pull cart. We are going to put pull carts out this weekend, and we're going to also initiate carts this weekend, which is another $18 per person per cart. When we do that, it will be one person to a cart. So if there's a foursome, there'll be 4 carts. We have 68 carts. When we run out, folks will either have to walk, use their pull cart, or wait till a riding cart becomes available. ID cards, which is the resident ID cards and non-resident ID cards, quite a nice week. In the last 4 days, we've sold $11,297 worth of those. Gift certificates, folks buying gift certificates to give to people to use to play golf later on during the year, has also been at $700. The negative in the brackets, the $1,359, is a good negative because that's the fees that we've had to pay to the credit card companies in order to run the credit cards that people are using, because we're not accepting cash. It's all plastic, to be able to play golf. Sidebar, I always try to look at a little humor somewhere. We actually shut their facility down because we had so many transactions taking place. I don't think they caught up with us until sometime this morning. So that is right now where we're at on the revenue side of things as of right now. Picked up a few more dollars, I'm sure, today. What I would like to do now is ask Mark to come in to address the next 2 slides. And I apologize that they might be a little small to see, but I think you'll be able to see them. We broke things down into 2 areas for you to see. One is our proposed initial payments. Our executive team, along with the finance team and Mark on the authority, went through and said, these are the payments that we need to pay, and we need to pay yesterday. So out of the revenue that we're generating and what we have, this is what came up as the top of the top that we have to pay. And Mark, if you don't mind taking us through these, I'll turn it over to you.
Sure. Thanks, Carl. Appreciate it. We start at the top. Excuse me. We start at the top there. The first 3 are our business insurance, our cart fleet, monthly lease, and our medical billing. And those are all 1 to almost 2.5 months late at this point. So those are definitely the most pressing items. The next couple are just some regular, as you can see, seat and turf, just operating equipment. The next couple, the bank interest, obviously, we can't do anything about. That will be taken automatically from our bank, and that won't happen until June 1st, actually. And Google as well, that's just an online debit that they take, and they do that at the end of the month. So we do have a couple weeks for that. That's it for those small items as well, just things that we know people will charge us late fees for, and we're already starting to see them a lot. So we want to get those out of here. And so tomorrow morning, I'm going to make a payment of roughly $46,000 out of that $47,972. The 2 items on the bottom there are our current payroll that'll be due next week. And we have not 1, but 2 pay periods in arrears because we had no money. So pay period ending April 17th and May 1st. We're not paid, we're not processed, we're not submitted, nothing happened. And so those are just estimates, could be a little different from that. But the plan is, since we have done so well so far and we expect a very profitable weekend ahead, that next week we will be able to pay the current and previous payroll. So everything on here basically will be paid in the next week, except for the items I mentioned at the end of the month. And I guess we can go to the next slide. So this is everything else. Nope.
All right.
Carl, can you?
I don't have control. Greg has control. There we go. That's it.
Thank you, Greg. Yeah, this is everything else basically on our balance sheet right now. So other than the 72,000, this is everything owed. This top couple of lines is really just what's called early orders there. Those are what our superintendent orders in the November timeframe early on, and then it's all upcoming turf, agricultural chemicals, and just maintenance products. And we usually get a good hit in the May to June timeframe. So those are all coming up. Some of them have been due. A couple of our vendors have been very, very easy to work with and have given us extra terms, which has been very helpful. Next line is all of our equipment leases. That's basically for all the heavy machinery that the guys use, all the mowers, utility carts, and construction type vehicles. And the bottom line, sorry, the line below that is all of our utilities with Eversource. So I won't go through every single line. It's just, as you can see, it's quite a bit of money there. And below the subtotal there, you'll see a payroll of April 17th. That's the one I spoke about before. It's a little higher because we had full staff on at that point. The last few weeks we've had some furloughs, and our credit line obviously of $200,000 that we have to consider starting to make a dent in, but not until we can get out of the hole with our regular vendors. So all in all, it's about $442,000, which, to Carl's point, you know, the amount of money that we've made is fantastic, but you know, to put it into perspective, we've still got to keep our foot on the pedal pretty hard.
And watch expenses.
Sorry?
And watch expenses very closely.
Yeah, yes, very true.
I also want to point out, Mr. Chairman, there on travelers, you'll see lined up. That was one of the impediments to us getting open because we had a back payment of over $21,000. We were able to get in touch with them, and they actually became very user-friendly, and we're able to knock that 20,000 down to about whatever that number, it's on the slide that we were just on with the smaller print. It was on at $7,000, and that's what we owe instead of the 21 that was on that previous slide. And I think that is actually, we're going to pay it here, obviously next month, but we were able to move that to June, I believe, right, Mark, before we have to pay that?
Well, just with the $21,000, that's 3 months worth. That's March, April, and May that I will be paying tomorrow. We still owe that. It's simply, it was due in the April timeframe, which moved to May 1st. And then they subsequently have moved it out to mid-May, which is why we do want to get that done. The $7,000 on this slide is the June payment, which would be due by June 1st. So 21,000 now, and then in about 2 weeks, another 7,000. So quite a bit of money for us.
And so you all understand our insurance is spread over 10 months, not 12.
Yep.
So that's some pretty hefty premiums. That's why I really and truly believe that once we get the flooding issue under control down by 5 and 6, 5 green, 6T, the gentleman that is behind us there on Taylor Avenue will not be having water in his basement and us filing claims to take care of that. And that should help get us out of, or at least head us to get out of the risk category. And that would save us quite a bit. I don't know what the dollar amount was, but I believe when we went into risk, our premiums went up something like 65% or something like that.
Yeah, pretty close. About 60%. It went up from 2018 to 2019. So last year we started in at a much higher premium. And then subsequently our insurance company actually dropped us because they felt that the risk was too high. And so this year we just got into an agreement with travelers and then have proceeded to not pay them 1 penny. So that's another reason that we don't want to get off on a bad start with them. We've been very appreciative that they've worked with us already.
Okay, thanks, Mark.
Yep.
Mr. Chairman, that's our update. We're open for whatever might be on your mind here.
Right. I will leave the presentation up so that members of the committee, if you have questions, you can reference the presentation. One question that I have, looking at the outstanding current debt list, are all of these due in June, or are these just outstanding items that you're flagging for future payment, June, July, August timeframe? There's no date associated when these items are due.
There is, this is made up of everything that is already past due, or due now, or due basically by the end of this month. There is just a small 1 or 2 items that maybe 3 or 4 items that are out into June and even July 1st, which one of our turf vendors have delayed our payments for.
Mr. Burnett, can I ask a question? I'm not on the committee, but ask a very quick question.
That's kind of out of order there.
I don't need to, but I can ask it at the BT meeting. It's fine.
Yeah, I like committee members to voice their questions if they have any at this time. All right, I'm not hearing any questions.
Actually,
So
I do have a question. This is David Huvelman. Do you anticipate more sales on the resident ID cards and the annual memberships, or do you think you're peaked
We
out?
do. I don't, that's a good question, David. We do. I don't know where we're at as of this moment about the 75 and 25 cap on the season passes, those type of things. But we do anticipate, yes, more sales on the residents and non-residents cards, because under the COVID rules that we agreed to with Lisa King and with the mayor, you can't play Oak Hills right now. You can't just do a walk-up. You gotta book online. And in order to book online and then get your receipt when you check in, you have to have a valid ID.
Thank you.
So according to this outstanding current debt, you've exhausted your line of credit. Is that what this is showing?
That is correct. That is a practice too that has been going on way too long. Of course, this year we were in a situation where when COVID hit, we had not, I think we still had around 50,000 that we had not accessed, and then we didn't have any choice. But that is a practice that we absolutely are working very hard at to have as a, like any of us that would take out a line of credit to have for emergencies, to have and not utilize. So yeah, that is, and that, by the way, has to be paid off by October and then remain at a zero balance for 30 days to be eligible for the line of credit in 2021.
This is David Huvelman again. Just really quickly, I'm very heartened by what you guys have put together here moving forward. And I know that this is tough times, and I hope that COVID and the weather plays fair and allows you guys to move forward and keep Oak Hills moving forward with this. But well done on what you put together.
Thank you very much. Really appreciate that. Everybody's worked very hard on this.
Thank you.
The one thing that might be helpful to share is, I know since we last looked at this type of analysis approximately 18 months ago, when we extended the loan with the city, that 18 months was to build up the necessary funding to move forward in a positive nature. What has been the true impact of COVID to Oak Hills in terms of dollar amounts? I don't see that from this presentation.
Yeah, I could have put that on here. I mean, as of about 2 to 3 weeks ago in lost revenue alone, it was around $215,000 to $220,000. because we also got started early this year, thank goodness to the weather in March. We had 2 weekends where we played, and we had, I think, Mark, what was it, about $27,000 to the good from those early openings that we did?
Yeah, it was something like that. And then, you know, the shutdown lasted for over 7 weeks, almost 8 weeks during the spring weather.
Right. Now, the other thing, Greg, too, is that we were out of the box with more booked outings. And that totaled, a week or two ago, that totaled about $119,000 in outings. We have lost to date probably close to 30,000, maybe a little more in outings that have canceled. Some of those that have canceled who are really nice folks to do business with, they didn't want their money back that they put down early. They just said, hang on to it and we'll use it for next year, for next year's outing. But because of the uncertainty of everything, a lot of the groups and the bigger ones decided to cancel the outing. So we lost revenue there also.
One other question, since you're speaking about outings, is that a possibility moving forward to be able to do outings with a distancing program? And are you thinking in terms of that? And is that a sale?
Yep, another good question. Yes, we want to try the ones that haven't canceled. We want to still try to make those happen, and we can do that with distancing. Hopefully by the time some of those come up, this social distancing is something we look up in our history books. The biggest impediment to that going forward would be food, because a lot of the outings book and then they all want to have something to eat and drink after the tournament's over. We may or may not be able to provide that from the restaurant. That's something that we're working on very hard also to see if we can do that. If that is not possible, then we're looking at alternative ways in which we could supply food, whether it be bringing food trucks up to the parking lot or catering and setting it up outside someplace. But we're thinking of any way and every way we can do to provide that so that we don't lose any business there going forward.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Great. Any other questions from the committee members at this time?
Now, Mr. Chairman, I don't know if I mentioned it too, but I also do know, I don't want to be remiss in thanking Nick Roberts also, who has offered that he would put people even a little after hours if need be to help us if we had to furlough some of the people that take care of the grounds. I know it's been an education for all of us that a lot of people think that all you do is jump on a mower and cut grass at a golf course. Yeah, it's a lot more intricate than that. But there are areas perhaps that they could help, and Nick has been great in offering some of the park and rec staff if we need that.
Great. Well, we hope that
Greg, this is Troy Geller. I don't know if I could ask a question at this point.
Really, this is really not you would be part of the
Oh, that's
public,
fine.
Troy, unfortunately. And
That's fine. We're gonna see them in a couple of weeks. I just had a quick question. That's fine.
No problem. So I just wanted to close with Oak Hills by saying I hope that the weather cooperates so that you can continue to see positive results, and hopefully the after the May 20th closing, some of those restrictions are lifted. That also that will allow different additional activity. I would also like to request that if next month at the June finance meeting, if you could come and provide a similar update. We'd like to stay on top of and aware of how things are progressing so that we can be part of the solution going forward. So if you can plan to do that in our June meeting, that would be greatly appreciated.
Consider it done. One of the things that, in the 10 months since I've been the chair that I have worked hard on, and it's been receptive on both sides, is that I think we all know we've had a communication problem. And I want to solve that. And the best way, in my opinion, and tell me if I'm wrong, is to do exactly what we're doing tonight and attending these meetings on a regular basis and being more involved with the BET and people not wondering, well, what the heck is the authority out there doing? Because people ask questions or get suspicious over things they don't know. So we're totally transparent, as you are, and yeah, that's not a problem.
Very good. Great. Thank you.
Thank you. I'm going to jump off now.
Okay, we'll move on to the next item, which will be item 11, which will be, let me, let's see, where is it? Here we go. Okay, so we're on to item 11, which is the first item, 11A, which is the approval of fiscal year 2020-2021 Parking Authority budget. Do we have a motion? All right, I see Councilmember Hooverman has raised his hand. And we have presenting the Parking Authority budget, Dick Brescia, who's the chairman. And I also see Jessica Casey, who is the Economic and Community Development Chief, and Catherine Hebert, who is the Transportation, Mobility, and Parking czar. So I will allow them to, who's going to lead?
I will talk. Mr. Brescia, the chairman of the Parking Authority, could not be with us tonight, so I will give you an overview. Okay, the Parking Authority approved budget for fiscal year 21 was approved February 26, 2020, pre-COVID. I know you're hearing a lot about that tonight, COVID this, COVID that, and we're all in the middle of that. That budget that was approved in February compared to fiscal year 20 showed a minus 0.32% decrease for a total of $7,320,748. The approved budget made some revenue and expense assumptions that were based on multi-year activity and demand at each facility and seasonality. At the Board of Estimate meeting, I mentioned the fact that the Parking Authority absorbs some of the state of Connecticut sales tax. The Parking Authority have been discussing and they are taking steps to pass that sales tax onto the customers in an effort to further reduce their expenses and the overall budget shortfall. So I want to give you a little overview about what's been going on since COVID. The Parking Authority response to COVID pandemic began immediately starting March 18th, when the mayor announced business closures and work from home policies. They suspended enforcement beginning March 18th, which included public messaging, bagging the meters, and posting free parking signs. They suspended parking fees April and May. They reduced expenses close to $1 million, which may further need to be reduced. They furloughed 39% of the parking staff while continuing to provide essential services to the community for over 4,300 on and off street parking, maintenance and cleaning of 11 city-owned parking assets. The audited accrued fund balance at the end of fiscal year 19 is $2,840,024. Pre-COVID, they had discussions about some of that money to be used to assist the city with economic development initiatives and parking programs and projects as outlined in the Parking Authority's strategic plan. However, things have changed. And they are planning on using some of that to cover some of their budget shortfalls due to very drastically reduced revenue collections. So now we're into some of the recovery. The governor and the mayor have targeted May 20th as a slow, gradual, phased-in state and citywide opening. The Parking Authority is evaluating several recovery scenarios. Last night, the Parking Authority discussed various reopening options and are expected to act on a plan at the end of May. The plan will balance the financial impact to the Parking Authority's budget, the responsibility they have to manage city-owned parking assets and on-street parking, the responsibility to ensure a net budget, and also to include economic development initiatives such as touchless payment, curb management that assist the business community with their reopening plans.
Do we have any questions? Catherine, do you want us to pull up the actual budget to display, or is that?
That's up to you. The actual budget, like I explained, is pre-COVID. And now the parking authority is meeting twice a month to evaluate activity changes, which we really don't know. We have a lot of data pre-COVID, a lot. We have data during this response period, but it's kind of zero. So like everybody else, we're sort of starting from scratch because we really don't know what the behaviors are going to be. We can make some assumptions, but we don't know. So as they meet every 2 weeks, they will evaluate how to maintain at least a net budget and also provide some of those operational changes that were those trends that we're seeing with touchless payments and curb management, which will become extremely important to moving forward.
So essentially, this budget plan that we're approving today will go through changes going forward as a result of COVID activity. Is that essentially what you're saying?
That is correct. And if I recall, the CFO said a similar thing last week and in previous meetings, that things are going to change. We just don't know what those changes are. We just don't have any empirical data right now to even make those assumptions. So we need to consistently look at all of this while providing those essential services and also those operational trends that are important to the city of Norwalk.
If I might add to what Catherine said, Henry Dackworth, CFO, we're citywide doing the same thing with our budgets. We don't know what the timing is for reopening. How does it affect revenues? How does it affect expenditures? And the parking authority is even closer to that with the suspension of collections and passes and ridership. So those revenues have dropped off. They've taken expense reduction steps to counterbalance that and on an ongoing basis. And again, I'll point out, this is for a full year, July 1st, 20 through June 30, 21. So I think we monitor what's going on. We make adjustments on the fly. There may be revenue shortfalls and additional expenditures, as we have had with cleaning of buildings, et cetera. But there may be expense reductions also by not having operational services. So we're balancing all those things, knowing we have a budget that was based in February on certain assumptions, and we just watch it very carefully and try to balance. I mean, this is an enterprise fund. By definition, the revenues they charge should equal the expenditures they expect at a zero basis level of break even. They do have 2.8 million in their fund, in their reserve fund, just like we have a rainy day fund, and that can be utilized to help with some shortfalls. And it's an ongoing monitoring basis. But I'll just point out, it's for next year. These changes have already been made to the fiscal year 20 budget because we were in it from February, March until June 30th this year.
Mr. Chairman, David Huvelman, I just have a question. Kathy, you spoke briefly about the touchless scenario. What is being done? What are you finding from a research standpoint right now of expanding that for people who are perhaps not as technologically savvy as people who have smartphones? What are we going to be able to do moving forward if touchless is the way we're going to have to go?
That's a really good question. So I'll try to start from the top and work my way down. So we have a very successful pay by sale program through Park Mobile. And that will be promoted through several different discounts, promotions to the public. And we want to make sure that we've already seen a shift from coins and dollars to mobile applications in the last 3 years, and more so in the past year pre-COVID. So we're going to promote that a lot. The other that we're going to roll out is a text to pay, which is used in different areas. I don't know if any of you experienced that at the new mall. They use a text to pay if you don't want to download their app, and it's very successful all over the place. The other program, Touchless program, that we've already partnered with the Maritime Aquarium. They will be offering, when they finally do open, they will be doing online ticket sales. And we already have a program with them. So when you buy your ticket, if you want to pay for your parking in advance, we're going to be promoting that even more and rolling that type of reservation system out at the South Norwalk Railroad Station. As far as those people who don't have the technology, yeah, that's a difficult situation. They carry cash and they use their credit card. We do have and we're going to continue to have a very visible cleaning and disinfecting of all our equipment. We're doing that now. And they go out there every hour, cleaning all of our equipment, cleaning all of the facilities, all the buildings. But that's a really good question. And in conversations I've had throughout the industry, it's a challenging one, especially when we're already transitioning from the manual payments to mobile applications. These were going to be this was happening anyway within the next 3 years. So it's been accelerated.
Do we have any idea what a cost projection is for that stepped up cleaning? Should we get, more of a business as usual amount of people utilizing parking within Norwalk, what that cost is?
I don't have it in front of me. I did submit our FEMA report and our projections to the finance department a couple of weeks ago, but off the top of my head, I don't have it. There is a cost to doing that. So that is that will be factored into our budget starting July in our building and maintenance. So there might have to be a trade-off. Instead of doing certain infrastructure improvements to the facilities, we'll have to use those projected budget expenses for that. I don't see that going away. I think it needs to be more visible. It needs to be signed, hey, to make people comfortable, and people have to see it. So that's a good question. We're going to continue to do that and make it very visible.
Thank you.
I know Jessica Casey is also on the call. I don't know if Jessica had anything to add to the presentation.
Thank you very much. Good evening, everyone. Not a whole lot to add, just in the sense of furthering Catherine's comments on that the operating budget was approved pre-COVID, and that we are meeting every couple of weeks to discuss the operating budget. We know that we need to be nimble. The Parking Authority understands and has working groups thinking about what the next steps are for parking and what fees would look like, and also groups talking about what the projected spends and expenses will be and what projected revenues will be. So Catherine's been working very closely with LAS, who is the group that operates and maintains the parking, and has been keeping everyone up to date. So I want to thank her for her good work. But we are definitely in a place where we know that we will need to be nimble and that we will need to make change. We just don't know what that change is today. So the operating budget was approved as pre-COVID, but we do know that we're going to have to continue to look at it. So I just wanted to emphasize that point, as both Catherine made and Henry as well.
Great, thank you. Are there any other questions from the member of the Finance Committee?
Greg, David Huvelman again. Just a quick question. Because of the downturn in parking, has this affected any of our contractual obligations with LAS?
No, it has not.
Thank you.
Okay, hearing no additional questions, I'll call for a roll call vote. Yay or nay for the approval of the fiscal year 2020-2021 Parking Authority budget. Councilmember Sacchinelli.
Aye.
Councilmember Keegan.
Yes.
Councilmember Hooverman.
Aye.
Councilmember Theodoridis.
Yes.
Councilmember Dumas.
Yes.
Okay, yeah, okay. It's unanimous and that is approved, and we will move that on to the May 26th Common Council meeting for council approval. Thank you.
Thank you all.
Thank you.
Moving on to the next item, which is the approval of the fiscal year 2020-2021 WPCA budget. Do I have a motion? Okay, I see Councilmember Hooverman. And we have on the call Anthony Carr, who is the Operation and Public Works Chief, along with Ralph Coble, which is the Supervisory Environmental Engineer. I guess, Ralph, you're going to lead the discussion on the budget?
That's correct, Chairman. Hello, everybody. Ralph Kolb with the Norwalk WPCA. First, I just want to point out that the Norwalk Water Pollution Control Authority is an enterprise fund of the city and manages the city wastewater facilities. Revenues are collected via sewer use fees. Fiscal year 2021 budget includes a $7 rate increase for a single family residence and an overall blended rate increase of approximately 2% over the previous fiscal year. After a long 2-year procurement process where the CFO, the mayor's office, Payroll Dana, we had WPCA consultant assisted, along with some board members of the WPCA, we selected Suez, and the WPCA board entered into a new agreement on September of 2019 for an initial term of 10 years, with 2 additional 5-year renewal options in the future. The current service agreement with OMI is set to expire this Sunday, May 17th, 2020. The new contract with Suez emphasizes asset preservation, enhanced operations, and high quality effluent into the Long Island Sound. We've been working with the current operator, OMI, over the last couple of years to replace approximately 125 pieces of equipment at the treatment plant and pump stations. That included various pumps, mixers, drive units, approximately $2 million in total. Capital projects are funded from reserve fund balance and no WPCA bonding requests this year. Some items to point out on the operating budget itself. On the revenue side, the WPCA is going to get approximately $150,000 in nitrogen credits from the state from 2019 wastewater performance. Also in the revenue section, we always provide support services for the city, and we do collect a revenue stream, a minor revenue stream from the city. And then on the expenditure side, the city provides a bunch of support services for the WPCA, like sewer billing. It goes on to the tax bill that Lisa Biagirelli and her team submit or send out each year. So we compensate the city for all that effort. Operation maintenance fee account increased to reflect the new service agreement with Suez. And on a positive note, professional and legal services accounts have decreased due to closure of the service agreement procurement and contract closeout with OMI. We also are experiencing decrease in debt service from the 1990 capital improvement projects. I guess, does anybody have any questions?
Ralph, you mentioned, are any major upgrades included in the budget?
Right now, we have an Outfall 2 project that's ongoing, but let me step back for a second for this fiscal year 2021 capital account request that we made. We had about $750,000 for a wastewater treatment plant. We're doing a facility plan. Basically, it's we haven't done one in over 10 years, and it just lays out what we're going to be doing, looking at the next 10 to 20 years at the treatment plant, along with population growth, making sure we have sufficient capacity and room at the treatment plant to accept that additional flow in the future. We're putting capital dollars into pump station rehab. We have a project that we're in design right now for the Keeler 5 Mile and Old Trolleyway pump stations. They were installed in the 1970s and haven't had any major upgrades since then. So we're looking to replace pumps, piping, controls, generators. Also take into consideration like a Keeler Brook, it's alongside the waterway, to make sure that we meet FEMA requirements as far as flooding and sustainability at the station.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Any questions for WPCA?
I'm sorry, just a clarification, those upgrades that you were just mentioning, those are built into this budget?
Yes. Yes, sir.
Thank you.
Mr. Chairman.
Yes, Mr. Scott.
Before we exit, I just want to commend Mr. Kolb for a very well-prepared budget. This is my second WPCA budget, and having a water and sewer background myself from the city of White Plains, I have to say that I'm fortunate enough to step into a very well-run entity. WPCA is managed extremely well, and I will take no credit for that. Ralph, with the help of Chris Torrey, they do a remarkable job at solving most of the problems before they even get to me. So these even though it's an enterprise fund and self-generating revenue, there's still a lot of work that goes into it. And like Ralph mentioned, Lisa Bajarelli and her team, which fall under CFO, they do a great job at making sure the correct amounts go out. And the billing is a bit more complicated than it looks on the paper, but on the back end, it works out very nicely, and it looks very simple. But in between, there's a lot of steps and iterations that go on. And then I have to say, it's a very critical piece of infrastructure. And Ralph, you've done a remarkable job. I have to spend very little time when I go over the budget because I know Ralph's already took a very diligent look at it. So thank you, Ralph. And to the Finance Committee, you're in very good hands with Mr. Kolb. And as I'm here longer, I've taken more of an active role with WPCA, but Ralph is the guy, and he's really doing a phenomenal job. So, and I think that the CFO saw that too when we went through the RFP procurement process for Suez. I mean, it was a phenomenally run process, and that wasn't by luck, that was by design. And that was because we had a good team, good consultants, but I mean, Ralph did a tremendous job with that too. So I think Henry, you sat in on all those.
I'd like to echo some comments. This RFP was well underway. It might have been a year before I even got here. And it was within weeks. They said, oh, you've done RFPs, please come in and help. Had monumental books. And Ralph and Chris would say, no, you just need to look at the financial section. I know if I do an RFP, I have to look at all. I've been doing this for decades. This is probably the best RFP I've ever seen in my life. I give credit to Ralph, Chris, obviously Anthony, and also their consultant, Mark McCormack. It was thorough, rigorous. They covered the operations, they covered personnel, they covered finance. I added 2 cents worth. And this is an important contract. It's 20 years. We're talking hundreds of millions of dollars. In my mind, it's probably the largest contract we have, except for some school construction. And I was very impressed with the quality of the consultant, the legal team, Ralph, Chris, and Anthony. I was just proud to be part of it. So that's number one. Number two, as I was doing my cybersecurity assessments, both for the city and then the Board of Ed, it occurred to me that infrastructure, power grids, et cetera, are vulnerable. We expanded the scope. We asked them to look over the WPCA, and they got sterling credit. Everything was in excellent shape, and whatever recommendations were made were implemented right away. As Anthony says, as an independent outside guy, I think they're in very good hands, both operationally, managerially, financially. I think Suez is a superb partner. We're looking forward to even better service. And I just say thank you on behalf of all the citizens in Norwalk. Keep doing what you're doing.
Thank you, everyone.
Great, thank you. And I also would like to thank Ralph and his team. I know during my time on the BET, I was on the WPCA, and that was what, 2-3 years ago. And Ralph had already given us headlights that we might have to change out the service contract. So it's that type of forward thinking that's really appreciated by Ralph and his team. And I know I learned so much about FOG, which is fats, oils, and greases than I would ever want to learn. But the way it was presented was in such a way that even a novice could pick it up and truly understand. So I appreciate that level of detail and explanation that really speaks well to how the WPCA is currently operating. So thank you, Ralph, for all that you do.
Thank you, Chairman.
Thank you, Ralph.
Much appreciated, everybody. Thank you.
Mr. Chairman,
Yes.
Dave, again, I just have a couple of quick questions I want to throw in there. Does the WPCA, being new to this, the WPCA have an excess or rainy day fund that they hold on to? First question. Second question is I see that your collectibles or your uncollectibles are based on 98.2 tax collection. 98.2%, but I think that we were looking at the city budget now as a potentially lower number because of where we're at. Have we taken into consideration a potential lower number?
To answer your first question, we have an opening fund balance of around $17 million for the WPCI. To answer your second question, sewer billing does go on the tax bill, and the tax collection rate is based off the city. That being said, it's based on each year, even though we're increasing by 2%, it's based on water consumption from the previous calendar year. So if it's a higher usage year for the commercial side, we may collect additional revenue. It does fluctuate a little bit from year to year, but we have sufficient, we've already calculated the fees for this billing year, and we're above what we anticipated in the budget. So even if we are reduced a little bit, we still will cover that shortage.
Thank you. I appreciate that.
David, if I might, let me add one more point about the finances. It is a separate enterprise fund. So on an annual basis, revenues are planned to equal expenditures, but they also have their own borrowing capacity. And the way the rating agencies look at an enterprise fund like this, they say, if they do not require funding from the sponsoring city, the affiliated local entity, so they're running in such a manner that they are running surpluses or break even for at least 3 years, then the rating agencies look to them for their own borrowing capacity. That has been true both for the WPCA as well as the parking authority. So in addition to our healthy bonding capacity, the WPCA has its own. So they are capable of borrowing for long-term projects and then building in the debt service to their rate structure so that they pay it off themselves. Really self-sufficient, but it gives you a little bit more comfort as well.
Henry, thank you for that clarification.
You're welcome, David.
Okay, if there's no further questions, I'll call for a roll call vote for the approval of the fiscal year 2020-2021 WPCA budget. Council Member Sachinelli,
Aye.
Council Member Keegan,
Yes.
Council Member Hooverman,
Aye.
Council Member Theodoridis,
Yes.
Council Member Dumas.
Yes.
The motion approves, the budget is approved, and that will be moved on to the May 26th Common Council meeting for final council approval. Thank you, Ralph, and thank you, Anthony.
Thank you, everyone.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman and members of the committee. Have a good night. Stay safe, stay healthy.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Guys.
Bye, Henry. Take care. Thank you.
We will move on to the next item in the on the agenda, which is item 12, which is authorize the mayor, Harry W. Rilling, to execute a contract with Shipman and Goodwin LLP to provide bond counsel services with pricing for services based upon the proposal submitted by Shipman and Goodwin to the city on January 28th, 2020, as amended by the May 1st, 2020 email from Bruce Chuckwick, account noted. Do we have a motion on this item? I see the motion has been made by Councilmember Keegan. And so with that, I'll turn it over to our CFO, Henry Dakowitz, for explanation.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I don't think there's anything we need to share on the screen. Thanks. We've had a 5-year contract with our bond counsel. The services the bond counsel provides are primarily related to long-term borrowing. So they're involved on a transactional basis as we raise funds, but also helping us in managing our debt, thinking about the future, helping us when we have presentations and discussions, when we contemplate certain types of deals, primarily to render an opinion when we borrow bonds that these are valid, properly issued, and that from a tax point of view, they comply with all rules so that the interest earned on those bonds would be non-taxable to the holders. We had an RFP, we had a committee who reviewed it. There were 4 proposals. 3 of the proposals were included as finalists, where instead of in-person interviews, we had Zoom meetings with each of them. And Shipman and Goodwin was unanimously selected by the committee. Let me just read from the memo I sent to the Finance Committee. Shipman has over 100 years experience serving as municipal bond counsel in Connecticut. They have served as bond counsel to the state of Connecticut and 23 cities and towns, including the state treasurer's office since 1994 and West Hartford. They have a sizable firm of 170 attorneys plus support staff, with 6 offices located in Connecticut, as well as offices in New York City and Washington, D.C. They have an excellent reputation for high quality work, excellent customer service. They had an outstanding presentation, excellent references, and a competitive price. Based on the discussion with the committee, after we selected them, they asked me to call Shipman and negotiate further on their price, and they accommodated us. The way the pricing proposal normally works is as a minimum and maximum per transaction, both for new money offerings when we're issuing bonds for the first time, as well as refundings. When we take existing bonds and issue new bonds in exchange to capture a lower interest rate. What Shipman did was they reduced their minimum and maximum for all bond offerings, new money as well as refundings, by $5,000. And that was even more competitive. And so we asked for their recommendation as bond counsel.
Thank you, Henry. Do we have any questions?
Yes, Mr. Chairman. Henry, this is David Huvelman again. Just a question is that I don't see any dollar amounts on the contract. Is that because it fluctuates based on what the bond issuance is each time?
Well, it tends to vary based on the number of bond issuances. So let's assume we have a $30,000 maximum on a bond issue. This past year, we did 3 bond issues, 1 new money and 2 refundings as interest rates went down. So that would be $90,000. I have spoken to the legal department, and we may put in a maximum for the whole contract, and it might be something like $100,000 per year, on the assumption that we're doing maybe 3 bond offerings at a very high maximum. So it's based on that, but that's why it's hard to say what's the maximum. It tends to go by bond issuance, but in addition to talking to them about their fees, I also talk to them about when I pick up a phone and I have a call, or I need a quick analysis or a quick point of view, there's no problem, there's no additional charge. Obviously, if we're requesting something significant, they would quote us a proposal and tell us in advance, and we are free to accept or not do that work. But I would say, for your rough estimate, no more than $100,000 a year. So over the 5 years, it would be $500,000. And much more likely, 1 or 2 bond issues a year.
Does that mean that it comes back to this committee and then subsequently the council to vote when an issue has happened and a dollar amount is assigned at that point?
I really don't know the answer. My assumption is this is the contract for 5 years. It's based on the pricing, as I said, per bond issuance. Again, historically, we've borrowed once a year in the summer. We've done refundings when opportunistically we can save some money. And this past year, because of the tremendous decline in interest rates, we did 2 different refundings. If the markets settle down, and now that the capital budget is almost finalized, if the market's allowed, I might do a 4th offering in June, okay, for this fiscal year. It's a question of what the market allows, but traditionally we do 1 bond offering a year, maybe 1 refunding. So I hope that answers your question.
Yes, thank you.
You're welcome.
Any other questions for the CFO on this item? Okay, hearing none. Just one quick item. I don't know if you mentioned, this contract, we presently are working with Shipman and Goodwin, correct?
No, that's not correct. We are working with Pullman and Comley, and we're going to switch to Shipman.
Okay, so I just want to make sure that was pointed out that this is a change, correct?
Yes.
Okay. If there's no other questions, I'll call for a roll call vote on this, starting with Council Member Sachinelli.
Aye.
Council Member Keegan.
Yes.
Council Member Hooverman.
Aye.
Council Member Theodoridis.
Yes.
And Council Member Dumas.
Yes.
Great. It is approved, and this will move on to the full council on May 26 for full council approval.
Thank you.
Thank you. With if there's no other questions or comments, I'll move for a motion to adjourn. Councilman Keegan has raised his hand. All those in favor?
Aye.
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 Okay, it's unanimous. Thank you for your time and energy. Have a good and safe and well evening and take care.